Good morning. Hope you're having a tremendous Friday. Hope it's a beautiful day where you're at. Certainly lots of sun outside my window, a little cooler temperatures, but a beautiful day nonetheless. So today is Good Friday, and as a Christian, this whole week is often referred to as Holy Week. For those in the Jewish faith, Passover's been celebrated. And so just a few thoughts coming through here today, being Good Friday, what that means to me, what it might mean to you, some of the things that are, what I would call very special to me, why this is such a great time of reflection for me, what are some of the things that, come to mind today. And so I want to begin with, first of all, Passover. Many of you celebrated a Passover meal or a Seder meal, as it's sometimes called, with your loved ones yesterday. And the whole idea of the Passover was established in the Old Testament. It came from when the Israelites left Egyptian captivity. The final plague that God sent was the death angel. And the firstborn of every animal, every man, was taken if the doorposts of the home were not covered with the blood of a sacrificial lamb. And so what the Israelites did was they covered their doorposts with the blood of that sacrifice. The death angel would pass by their home if that blood atonement had been made for that house. And so that's this concept where we have to start Good Friday with, is the understanding of without the shedding of blood, there was no payment for sin. So in the Old Testament, the people would have to bring their sacrifices as a blood offering for their sin. And you go, well, that's horrific. Why? Why so barbaric? And here's the thing that is hard to come to grips with sometimes, but if you get really honest with yourself, you'll see why. So God is holy and righteous. The standard is perfection. That is who he is. That is his nature. And sin doesn't have a place in that equation. And yet God is also love. And so the thing that he wants more than anything is a relationship with us. And so the covering was sacrifice. You see that in the account of Adam and Eve's fall from grace, where sin entered the world. First thing that they did is they hid because they were naked and ashamed. What the Bible records is that God made the first sacrifice and clothed them in the skin of an animal. And so that sacrifice became the covering, and you see that all through the history of the Old Testament. So where does that apply to you and me? Well, I think I'm a decent person. I think I'm a good guy. But if I get really honest and I consider the thoughts of my mind, I consider the way that I've spoken to my wife, my children at times, the way I've thought about other people, some of the things that I've said, some of the things that I've done, some of those dark things that come out of me in my worst moments. I realize I'm not as good as I'd like to think I am. There are things within me that bubble out at times that are absolutely horrific, that are absolutely abominable, that are absolutely 100%, I would be horrified and ashamed if you were to see those things. Truth is, we all have those things. We all have those components. We all have a past. We all have mistakes. We all have outright rebellion. And that's what sin really looks like. And so, through the ages, there began to come about a word from God through his prophets that there would come a conquering king who would suffer, but by his suffering, we would be healed. In fact, the book of Isaiah talks about the fact that by his stripes, by his wounds, we're healed. And so here comes Jesus 2,000 years ago. And he begins to tell the world, I'm the one that's going to set things right. I'm the one that's going to restore. I'm the one that's going to fulfill everything that the law requires. And he began to prove who he was through miracles. We've all heard the miracles of Jesus, healing the sick, making the lame to walk, the blind to see, feeding the multitudes with a handful of bread and fish. We've all heard the miracles. Then he spoke to Lazarus in the tomb, and Lazarus came forth from the tomb, and he began to talk about the fact that the tomb wouldn't hold him either, that he would rise again. And so as he began to talk, he began to bring to light that he truly was God and he truly was man. And so the religious leaders of the day said, that's blasphemy. He's got to die. He's got to die. He's upsetting the religious system. And so they determined the best way to deal with him was to kill him. But because it was the time of Passover, they didn't want that blood on their hands, and so they went to the Roman government. Pontius Pilate. Maybe if you saw the Passion of the Christ a few years ago, you saw this scene reenacted. But Pilate begins to question Jesus and finds that he has no cause to put Jesus to death. In fact, Pilate's wife warns him, have nothing to do with this man. I suffered greatly in the night because of this man in a dream. And Pilate keeps looking for ways to turn Jesus loose, but the people want his blood. And you know what? That was the plan all along. The night before Jesus was crucified, he was in the garden praying. It's the place he was arrested. It was the place he was betrayed. And in that garden, he was asking, if there's any way, if there's any way I can avoid this, if there's any other way to make things right between God and man, that's what I would love to see. But then he went on to say, not my will be done, but yours. And he surrendered himself to the eternal plan. The eternal plan had always been that sin would be defeated, death would be defeated, the grave would be defeated. And so Jesus surrendered himself to that plan. The Bible refers to him as being a lamb led to slaughter. He's whipped with a cat of nine tails by the Roman soldiers. If you don't know what that is, a cat of nine tails is a whip with lead balls and bone shards woven into it. So when it hits the flesh, it hooks in, and when that Roman soldier would pull it back, it would rip the flesh away. His beard was plucked out. He was spit upon. A crown of thorns was put on his head and jammed in. He was beaten. He was mocked beyond recognition. And then he was crucified between two thieves. Sign above his head said, here's the King of the Jews. And he's placed at a crossroads where people could see that. So Good Friday focuses around the crucifixion. Crucifixion was the place where the sin of the world was paid for. See, my ledger is deep. I owe a debt I can't pay. Remember, I told you there are things that pop out of me that are horrific. There are things I've done in my life that there's no other word for it. Sin is the description. It is contrary to God's standards of conduct, behavior, heart, etc. The problem is, I can't make that record right. God had a better plan. He took my guilt. He took my shame. He took my bill. He took my penalty. And he put it on Jesus. Because Jesus was here for that purpose. See, when Jesus was on the cross, there's some things he cries out. One of those is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because sin is the thing that divides me from a right relationship with God. And so when Jesus took my sin, your sin, the world's sin upon himself, that relationship was severed in the moment. God had a better plan. The cross is where the record gets reconciled. It's interesting, the final thing that Jesus said is, it is finished. The term he uses, tetelestai, which in Aramaic is an accounting term, simply means that the books are reconciled, that the ledger is clear. There is no balance owed. It is finished. See, that's the good news of the cross. It is finished. That ledger is reconciled. I do not owe that debt anymore because Jesus paid that debt for me on that cross. Now, as a Christian, there's one other piece that we have to get to here in a couple of days, and that's the fact that the story doesn't end there. Because the cross is empty and the tomb is empty, but that's Sunday's story. For today, what we're focused on is, what did Jesus do for me? How did he take care of my debt obligation? How did he take care of the very thing that kept me from having a right relationship with God? He took the penalty on himself. So in our household today, one of the things we're going to do this evening is we're going to celebrate communion together as a family. We're going to get on live stream with the rest of our church, and we're all going to walk through what Jesus did for us together, and we're going to celebrate communion. The bread representing his body, the juice representing his blood, remembering that his body was broken for each one of us, his blood was shed for each one of us, and because of that, we have a right relationship with God. See, that's the beauty of the Christian faith. It's not about keeping rules and regulations, because we just can't keep rules and regulations. History proves that. God would tell his people, hey, stop doing this. And they would go, okay, we're not going to do this. And you'd turn a few pages in your scripture and you find, nope, they're back to doing that. And here would come the penalties again. See, that's the beauty of the cross. The cross is where the penalty was taken care of. So just a few thoughts for you today. I hope you'll reflect on those. I don't know if you're a follower of Jesus. If you are, that makes sense. If you're not, I want to invite you to just explore the question, what if what Jesus did was really for me? One final thing for you, Friday freebie, my book, Lessons from the Storm. You can pick it up on Amazon free of charge through Sunday. It is my family's journey and my journey through a devastating tornado in 2001 and some of the spiritual and life lessons that came from that. Have an amazing day. Jesus died for you. The worst thing I can think about is that he would do all of that for you and you wouldn't unwrap the present and make it yours. So take that thought to heart, and I'll talk to you again soon.